day everybody, it is Calxiyn here, and if you guys enjoyed this video, you should subscribe for more Miraculous Ladybug videos. Today we are going to be doing our analysis and discussion of Lies, which is the second episode in Season 4, and before we get into it, let me remind you guys that you should subscribe for more Miraculous Ladybug videos. Check out the Patreon, becoming a YouTube membership member, or sending a tip on the Calxiyn.com website if you guys want to support me directly, or you guys should join our Discord server to talk with other Miraculous Ladybug fans. Now you guys may notice something a little bit different about me. That is because I am using my VTuber model because I am not feeling well. I'm very, it's not the plague, but I'm sick. I feel sick, and I didn't want to get ready. I do also have arms, but my arms don't seem to be working, and I know that sounds so silly, but I didn't want to make more work for the editors, and so I'm not gonna use my arms because my arms were going all over the place. And so maybe in other videos where I'm not doing the screenshots at the same time that I'm speaking, maybe in more of a scripted video or something, I could use my arms, but I can't use my arms, but I do have arms, just so you guys know. But yeah, I'm not feeling well, so I was just I need to do something else today because I'm not getting ready. So that's what's happening with that. In terms of what's happening to my reaction to this episode, you guys may be wondering about that. It's blocked again in the exact same places it was last week. Again, this seems to be an issue with the RTS, the Switzerland version of the show. I guess they're just a little bit more strict, so I am gonna try to re-release my reactions when the English version comes out and all that stuff, but I'm still planning on doing little mini discussions based on these episodes, discussions, theories, maybe reaction highlights and stuff like that. So I'm still working on it. But if you're an Australian or a Canadian or you're Irish or something, you can go watch my reaction. It's available to you. But if you're American, or if you're in the UK, or I think Italy and Germany and some other places, you're out of luck. And hopefully this video won't be blocked. The last analysis wasn't. So with that all out of the way, why don't we just get into it? So we start with Marinette trying to translate something that Master Fu had given her. Now, Tiki's saying that's normal, it's in Guardian secret code, you can't let anyone get this stuff. And I would say that this is actually going to be connected to something that we saw in episode 6. In Furious Fu, if you guys remember, we saw Marinette use this anti-akumatization charm, which means basically if you were akumatized, you can't be akumatized again. We see Marinette give that charm to Master Fu. And so I would best guess that this is actually connected to that power that she has later, especially because in a couple other sentences, Tiki mentions that, hey, don't worry, Marinette, you helped Master Fu with the aquatic one, right, with the aquatic transformation, and we see that when Marinette does this, she does transform and get a new suit. And so I would say that that's actually connected to that, and this thing that she's trying to figure out is actually going to be additional powers for her, maybe in the future Cat Noir, but I think that this is going to be directly connected to the anti-akumatization charm one at the very least. I really like this scene just because you can see more of the Kwamis' personalities and that Marinette needs to have more food around than just sweets, because obviously Tiki likes cake, Plag likes cheese, but all the different Kwamis probably have their own food preferences. The other thing that I liked about this scene is we actually get back to the Prince Ali stuff. If you guys saw the subtitle there, it's oh yes, we're planning to celebrate Prince Ali's birthday, and so that helps with the timeline because that is what Jagged Stone was preparing for last episode. So I thought that was just a nice little touch. And then we have Alec being hey, here's an exclusive report about Adrien, and we see Marinette obviously drop everything she's doing to fawn over him. But I found this scene very interesting just because it showcased that Adrien has the perception of a glamorous life, right? That, oh, he has this perfect life, but you actually see, in the footage, that he's not that happy. So for example, this is the wax Adrien statue, right? And he's here, but he's also yawning. He's bored, right? This isn't a very interesting thing for him to do. We see him doing some photo shoots, but then he looks sad. And so that is more for us as the audience, as we sort of, go through and see Adrien through his day-to-day life, it's a reminder for us that his life is not all sunshine and rainbows. He's actually very sad and bored, and he doesn't really want to do all of these things. See, and so even Marinette's yeah, he has an amazing life, but we get over here what an endless day without a lunch break. It's unbearable, right? And so we get that dialogue to contrast and make sure the audience knows that Adrien just just has the perception of a perfect life, but he actually enjoys his life as Cat Noir more. And we get that in this dialogue here. I'm finally free. And then he turns into Cat Noir, right? Like, he sees Cat Noir as, like, I think, like, his place where he can be free to be more of his true self, whereas Adrien in real life has to put on this sort of, like, model persona. And that's not to say that everything about Adrien is fake. However, it's just that he has to act a certain way. It's like, you know, when you go to work, you're not going to act the same way at work as you do when you're with your friends, or when you're with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or something like that, or when you're with your family, right? Like, we all have masks that we put on to, I guess, blend into, like, socially acceptable situations, if that makes sense, right? Like, your work mask, if you put on your work mask with your friends, that would be kind of like cold and like maybe a little too professional. If you put on your friend mask at work, that may be a little bit too casual. Like, I think that we all have things like that, right? And so I know that people don't like this idea that Marinette is who she truly is as Ladybug, and how Adrien is like who he truly is as Cat Noir. And I don't really subscribe to that idea either. Like, both halves of themselves are part of themselves, but what we do need to consider, specifically for Adrien's case, because I feel like that Marinette's personality, like, as Marinette and as Ladybug, like, she doesn't have that sort of same divide that Ladybug is her true self, quote unquote. I don't think that she has necessarily the same thing going on as Adrien. I think that that's actually more true of Adrien, just because he has to put on these airs in public, I guess. And when he's Cat Noir, he doesn't need to put on those same airs. And so I think that's more true of Adrien compared than it is for Marinette. But ultimately, they're both still parts of themselves. I guess that argument really comes from, like, oh, like, Marinette can't be confident around Adrien as Marinette, and she's confident, like, we see her be confident as Ladybug. But we see Marinette be confident as Marinette too, just like how we see Adrien be, you know, sort of clown around as Adrien. And so it's not necessarily like these two divided, like, you know, it's not a Jekyll and Hyde thing. It's not something like that, right? It's just, you know, what's socially acceptable to do in that moment, right? And so it's one of those things. But I think the bigger divide is Adrien and Cat Noir. I hope I didn't mix up the identities and the names. The love square, not even just a love square, the personality square, the persona square is what's getting to me today. But yeah, you guys know what I mean. And we have to keep in mind that that's actually something that comes up in this very episode, is that Kagami is like, stop clowning around, that's not you. But Adrien's like, well, what if I told you that was really me? And so we have to also think in, like, universe, Adrien sees this as his true self, when he can sort of do whatever he wants and be how he truly is, be a clown, right? But Kagami thinks that the fake life that Adrien presents is who Adrien really is. And so that's a very compelling thing for this episode as well. And I really like this episode because we see the Cat Noir side of the day, like, of lies. We see the Cat Noir end, and we see that Ladybug has left him alone on patrol, which we learned last episode, but we didn't really see how much it was impacting him until this episode, because we have, you know, I'm here on time, but you're not. And so we see sort of this time lapse. Adrien's there, he's there, and he's waiting and waiting and waiting, and then we get, what could she be doing? And so he starts to leave a message. Maybe now that you're the miraculous guardian, you've got more important things to do, quote unquote. And I was like, oh boy, Adrien's getting mean. That's a little bit of a savage thing to say, right? But he was a little passive aggressive, but then he changes his tone. He's like, but it's okay, I'm just the cat for the job. Like, he's trying to be positive on the phone to Ladybug, but you can see almost like that's fake as well, because as soon as he hangs up, he's sad again. And so it's interesting that even as Cat Noir, there's also multifaceted presentations, right? Like, he's really sad on the inside, but he presents to Ladybug like he's like, oh, well, you know, don't worry, I'll just do patrol. Like, that's how he presents on the outside. And so it's not as black and white as like, oh, Cat Noir's a true personality while Adrien isn't. It's just like you know, it's that sort of cycle of putting on airs in all these different situations. And so here we got some Cat Noir fans, so that was pretty good. That was pretty cool. And like, he, you know, takes the picture, but he looks kind of sad that they just maybe left him after. I think that it could be a couple of things. Like, I interpret this scene in two ways. One, he already gets that all the time as Adrien, and so I feel like that he doesn't really want to be like some sort of celebrity as Cat Noir. He doesn't just want to exist for people to take pictures of him. Adrien already suffers like that, so that's the first thing. The second thing is that I think that he was hoping that they'd like stick around and talk to him and not just use him as like a prop, you know? And so I think that that's really the other thing in this scene, is he was hoping for something actually like meaningful to happen and go down, but it didn't. I thought that this scene was actually really funny because it seems like Cat Noir is trying to coax an akumatization. Like, he's like, don't you feel sad, anxious, a little bit desperate? Like, he's like, nothing's going on. Like, who's getting akumatized today? He's almost trying to like convince him to be akumatized, but Mr. Pigeon's like, nah, I'm good. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that seems to almost disappoint him, I think, because he knows that the only way he'll see Ladybug is if there's an akumatization, if something's so serious that Ladybug cannot possibly ignore it. And see, he's like, oh yeah, I'll say hi to Ladybug for you if I ever see her. And I was just like, oh my god, that's so sad. Like, this is getting sad. And this scene, oh my god, this was so funny. Like, oh, the scene at the bar, like, this is such like an adult joke. Like, we're watching Bewitched, and if you guys don't know, Bewitched is a very old show. I can't believe I'm explaining this. Bewitched is a very old show, and it's on CTV, and that's a Canadian like television app if you guys want to go watch Bewitched or whatever. But we're watching Bewitched, and there are a bunch of scenes in Bewitched. It's like a sitcom, right? And so there's a bunch of scenes where like the husband like goes to the bar and he acts all sad because like his wife is a witch and like she's done something to make him upset, I guess. And then by the end he realizes that he shouldn't have been upset and that he was overreacting, and then he goes home. Right? Like, that's basically the whole like format of like a bar scene, and like that's the first thing I thought of. Like, it happens in modern shows too, but that's all I could think of. Like, Cat Noir going to the bar and he's asking for a glass of milk, and this is the hotel bar, right? Because, or is it the bar for the apartment building? Does Chloe live in a hotel, or is it an apartment? I think it's a hotel. And so yeah, Chloe's here. Like, this is like Chloe's like the hotel that she lives in, and he's just here. He's getting a nice hard cold drink of milk. And so I thought that this was a really funny scene because this is more like a joke for the adults that the kids wouldn't really understand, especially because like after the Chloe thing happens, he's like, oh yeah, I'll take a double milk, right? It's sort of like, oh yeah, I'll take, I don't know, like I'll take a double rum or something. I don't drink. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know exactly, but like, it's one of those sorts of things. So I thought this joke was really, really funny. So then we have this scene with Chloe and Sabrina. I don't know if this is foreshadowing for anything else. Like, I think that Sabrina may get a Miraculous, and so maybe that's what this scene could be, right? Like, I don't know, it kind of does seem like I had this theory that Sabrina would get the dog Miraculous, and I do want to make an individual video on who I think will get what, but it's kind of funny how like Chloe's like, no, like don't speak, like she's ordering her around a lot like a dog, right? How you're like, okay, sit, don't bark, like all of those sorts of things, and it's kind of fucked up, to be perfectly honest, right? And so yeah, we have this little scene. I don't know what else it was supposed to be providing other than like reminding us that Chloe's still a mean person. It could also actually be like bleeding into the new queen bee holder. Like, we see how Chloe's been acting lately and we're like, yeah, no. And so that could also be why. It could be for that reason as well, just to showcase how Chloe's been acting and why she'll probably get replaced in that episode with the new queen bee holder and when Chloe gets akumatized. So then while Cat Noir's leaving another message to Ladybug, he's actually accidentally eavesdropping on this conversation between Kagami and her mom, who are practicing. Apply these principles to fencing if you want to be better than Adrien Agreste, right? And so she basically says, I learned the lesson well. I don't know what came before that, and never let yourself be surprised. And so I don't know about like the lesson part. Maybe it's like, learn the lessons that you learn, or I guess are taught well, and never let yourself be surprised, and that's how to be better than Adrien, right? And so Adrien, don't worry, mother, I have everything I need to succeed. And so I don't think that they're talking about fencing. I think that they're talking about relationships, because I honestly feel like Kagami's mom has tried to put her in some sort of weird arranged marriage marriage with Adrien. Like, I know that we had all that, like, that whole episode where Marinette thought that and she was overreacting and their parents were signing contracts and stuff, but, like, seriously, I do think that this is, like, almost like a betrothal situation where they're trying to, like, the mom has the expectation that she'll marry someone like Adrien or Adrien himself, like someone of that social status at the very least. And so she's like, don't worry, Mom, I got the Adrien thing, like, in the bag, under control. Like, it's a double meaning. It's not just to beat him in a fencing match or a competition at the school. It's also to, like, win his heart. And obviously she fails. Oops, right? Oopsie, she fails, right? And so that's the other thing about this scene. And so Adrien goes back home and he's looking at his phone and his wallpaper is obviously Ladybug, and then Plag starts to compare women to cheese, okay? On You Forget It Exists So Much Else, right? So that's like a very rough translation from the French. Like, basically, what Plag is trying to say is like, hey, you're forgetting that when it comes to cheese, like, there's a variety of cheese. There's not just your favorite camembert cheese. Like, try another type of cheese, right? And so he's talking about cheese, but then he goes over to the photo of Kagami, right? He's trying to say there's a variety in, like, girls, right? There's a variety in girls. Like, you may like the girl cheese the best, but, like, try this other type of girl cheese. It's kind of a weird metaphor, but, like, it makes sense for Plag, right? And so at the end of the episode, this actually parallels to him saying something like, yeah, I get it. Like, I like other cheese too, but I always go back to camembert, right? Because that's Plag's favorite cheese. And so the end of the episode is like, yeah, there may be other cheeses that are nice, but this cheese will always be your favorite, and I understand that. Like, he comes full circle basically with this metaphor, and he recognizes that like Ladybug is the best cheese, the only cheese for him in a way. And so yeah, we're gonna get off this weird metaphorical topic. And so what's interesting about this scene is that Natalie's like, hey, like, your fencing schedule has changed again, and Adrien actually picks up, like, what are you hiding, Kagami? Why are you changing my schedule? So he even knows that the schedule isn't supposed to be like this, but Kagami is basically like tricking their parents so they can spend more time together. And so this is something that Kagami refers to later in the episode. She basically says something like, hey, I lie to my mom, I lie to your dad, I lie for us to be together, but you lie to get away from me. And that's the worst part, isn't it, about this whole episode, is like that specific piece of dialogue. But you already see that, yeah, she's lying to her mom. Like, she's upright lying to her mom. And I love this, because this is so funny. Like, the schedule changes imposed by those aggressors are exhausting, right? Like, make the most of it and do an extra hour of Russian. And then, you know, Adrien's dad, Gabriel, is just like, those schedule changes imposed by, I can't say Kagami's last name, I forgot, are exhausting. So each parent thinks that it's the other parent doing it, but it's really Kagami pulling some strings so they can spend extra time together, right? Oh, dear. So I had a big bang in my background, and I forgot what we were talking about. But anyway, we get to the school, and they're like, hey, your fencing lesson doesn't start for another hour. Like, you guys can't just hang out here. And then they're like, no problem, we'll come back. But really, Kagami, again, is lying and sneaks into the art room with Adrien. And so I thought that this was a fun scene, because it's like, but what are you gonna do, Kagami? And then they just sneak in here. And so I thought that this was really nice. Now let's talk about this parallel, because I think this is actually, like, really, really fascinating. The fact that Kagami has a passion for drawing basically makes her more of a parallel to Marinette, right? Because obviously Marinette draws, she's like a little fashion designer, right? Like, that's what Marinette does. And so it's interesting to see that Kagami has that same passion too. It's a lot like how Adrien can play an instrument, but Luca can play an instrument as well. Like, two of their passions actually connect with each other and parallel with each other. Like, Adrien seems to play because he's more forced to, not to say that he doesn't like to. I'm sure that Adrien likes to play the piano, but not for a million hours every day, right? And so, whereas he has to be forced to play it by his father, Luca, like, feels the music, right? And so we have this situation where Kagami draws in secret because her mother does not approve, but Marinette draws out in the open and her parents follow her dreams. And so that's a nice little parallel that I noticed. So then we have Adrien encouraging her, telling her that she is really good no matter what her mom says. So that was really sweet of Adrien. And then Kagami wants to start to draw him. And so he starts to do a couple poses that are his, like, go-to modeling poses, his kind of fake poses, right? And so she says, I'm doing this isn't you. She also mentions how, like, she starts talking about an artist, and I don't know what the significance is of it, but she basically talks about how there's this artist that draws people using, like, Japanese, like, characters and stuff, and I've heard of that before, and it's really cool. Like, basically, like, what people will do is they'll do the Japanese character for a bird, but then make a bird out of the Japanese character, right? And so, like, it's kind of hard to explain. Like, I mean character as in, like, letter, by the way. Like, basically, the letter for bird, they will make it, like, look like a bird. It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah. And so she talks about that, but I don't know what the significance of that is. I think they were just trying to make her more artsy, right? Talk about that. It's easy to make beautiful art of you since you are beautiful, but I want to draw the real you, what you are inside, right? And so then, like, you know, he does a couple other poses, and she's like, this isn't you either. Like, you're trying to be a model. Like, who are you, Adrien, right? Those are model poses. Try something more natural, more like you. And so Adrien then decides that he wants to do the cat, because this is his, like, cat noir pose. And so he's like, what do you think of cat? And so he was, like, so close to telling her. And I actually think that Adrien could be one of the first characters that tells someone else's identity. And I say that because, like, obviously, like, yes, that would be dangerous, but not the same amount of danger that it is for Ladybug, because Ladybug is the guardian, and not only is she the guardian, but Ladybug also is, like, the problem solver to save the day. Whereas, like, yes, Adrien's important, but you could have somebody else break the object instead of using Cataclysm, and we do see that in this very episode, right? And so I feel like that I could see Adrien revealing his identity to someone, and that's, like, the first identity reveal. Like, I don't think it'll be Kagami, per se. Like, I don't think it'll be Kagami, but at the same time, like, Kagami and Luca, compared to a character like Chloe, right, or Alia, like, hardly ever get akumatized. They've only been akumatized, like, really in response to either protecting them or, like, them, right? Like, Kagami got akumatized because of Adrien, or Luca got akumatized protecting Marinette, and because of Marinette, right? And so you could argue that they're probably one of the more safer characters to tell. The only problem is, like, if they did get akumatized, again, like, would they tell Hawkmoth that they know the identity of Cat Noir? Like, that's the only thing with that. Like, that could be a concern. But I could see, like, Adrien actually being the first one to tell someone, because it's not as big of a deal as if Ladybug tells someone, because then that's, like, the identity of Ladybug, the only one that can stop the Akuma, the only one that can save the day. Whereas Cat Noir, though he is important, like, isn't the only one that can do a cataclysm or break an object. And so then Kagami's like, no, that's absolutely not natural, right? And so I think it's funny because Kagami doesn't recognize, like, Adrien's trying to be like, no, that is who I am, I promise, like, right? And so she doesn't love Adrien for his quote-unquote real self. Like, she doesn't love Adrien's Cat Noir part. She loves, like, the fake perception that Adrien, like, puts on TV, I think, to some extent, or like a middle ground, right? Because she doesn't like the model poses either. Like, she's like, oh, the model poses are forced, but at the same time, like, the pose that Adrien feels deep inside of his heart is too much like a clown. He's like, but I promise, that is really me. No, this is when you're acting like a clown. And so it's like, maybe I am a clown, right? That's basically what Adrien says. Maybe I am a clown, right? And so that's not something that is acknowledged by Kagami. And so I feel like that, again, not necessarily that Kagami likes the fake Adrien that's on TV, but I think that she likes, like, a middle between the fake Adrien and the Cat Noir Adrien. Like, she just likes the fake Adrien to a lesser degree, where she's like, okay, well, the model pose is explicitly fake, so give me a pose that's really you. She doesn't want to recognize that that pose, like that Cat Noir pose, is his true self. And I feel like that this is really interesting, right? Because she pushes him up against the wall and is like, that's you, I guess. That way, that's who you really are. Like, you know, like, that way as in, like, this way. Like, when I'm in front of you trying to kiss you, that's who you really are. But see, like, here's the thing about this. Maybe I read this in a different way, because I'm a little bit, like, older. Obviously, like, the show is, like, geared towards, like, a younger demographic, but has been, like, I think taken over. I think it's fair to say that Miraculous Ladybug is a show that has been taken over by teenagers, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, 15 plus, instead of like what the show was originally like the demographic for. But, and the episodes are getting more mature lately, and obviously, like, this video is for people that want to analyze and want to discuss, and that, like, skews over to an older demographic as well, because, my channel is not for kids. Kids don't want to discuss or analyze anything, right? Like, that's teenagers, in my opinion. Teenagers and, like, adults that like to really, like, critically break down media and stuff. So maybe I'm just reading this, like, in a different sort of way, but, like, it's kind of weird that how she sees Adrien, like, yeah, this pose is who Adrien really is. It's the pose when she's kind of treating him more like an object compared to a person. Like, yeah, like, when I, like, lean in to kiss you, like, that's who you really are. When I push you up against a wall and try to kiss you, that's who you really are, right? It almost, like, reads to me that who Adrien really is to Kagami is, like, just another achievement, or just another, like, reward, just another, like, acquisition almost. Like, you know what I mean? Like, her mom, I guess, puts all this pressure on her for her to acquire goals. And I feel like that's really, like, how Kagami is and where they differ. Like, Adrien understands that it's sort of like, you know, goals that don't really matter. To be a model who's on the cover of a magazine or a perfume bottle. Like, Adrien doesn't really care about that stuff. That's not really Adrien. You know, like, he just does it to appease his father. Where I feel like that Kagami is a little bit different, where she actually sees that, like, acquiring goals and acquiring achievements is, like, the only way to achieve her mom's love and affection, and it's the only value that she has as a person. Like, I feel like that Kagami feels that if she doesn't, like, do these things, that she has no self-worth, whereas Adrien knows that his self-worth doesn't come from doing those things. He just does it to appease his dad. But they appease their parents in different ways, where I feel like that Kagami actually does believe that if she doesn't get first place in fencing, or if she doesn't know Russian, like, that she's less of a person, whereas Adrien does not feel that same, like, struggle. Like, he knows his self-worth is outside of everything that his father makes him do. And so I feel like that to her, what this scene is sort of saying is that, like, this is who Adrien is, like, in a position where I can just acquire him, right? Where I can just acquire his heart, like everything else that I acquire in life, I guess? I don't know if that's too deep of a meaning, but that's the meaning that I sort of see in this scene, is that she's just like, yes, this is perfect. When you give me what you want, like, this is perfect, right? And so that obviously has, like, a questionable undertone to it, but it's also, like, not necessarily Kagami's fault. Like, that is the person that her mother has molded her into. And so I would really like Kagami to really break out of that and start realizing that she has more self-worth as a person, instead of, like, just, like, what she gets or what she wins at, or, like, who she's dating, right? And so I feel like that's, like, the thing with Kagami, in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, that's just sort of how I read the scene. I read it as, like, you're, like, this is who you truly are, like, when you're with me, because, like, now, like, I can, you know, show you off. It's a checklist, right? It's a checklist for her. It's like how some people are like, yeah, I want a big house and a car and, like, 5 kids, right? And that's just a checklist for them, like a checklist that they think that they need to complete in order to feel, like, worthy. Like, I feel like that's sort of how Kagami feels, and that's how she sees Adrien. Like, yes, Adrien, this is who you really are, like, the check mark, or I guess the box that I can just check mark off the list. And again, I'm not saying that Kagami's doing that in a malicious way, but I think that is just how, like, she was sort of raised, in a sense. And Adrien could have easily turned out that way too, but I think that, you know, like, his situation was kind of different, and he found a lot of worth in, like, Cat Noir, right? And, like, seeing what he could really do when he wasn't being, like, sheltered by his father. Like, he finds value in a bunch of other stuff as well. And so again, like, the you are perfect thing, like Kagami only sees Adrien's perfect side and won't recognize his imperfect side that he has as Cat Noir. And so this scene was kind of cute, just because you have Kagami, like, kissing Adrien on his mask, right? And they almost kiss again, but then we start getting into the same thing that we saw in last episode. So what I thought was actually really cool about this was the fact that we were kind of seeing the other side of events, but from Adrien's perspective. So for example, you see that Ladybug is fighting the plane, and then Adrien leaves to go help fight the plane, right? And so this is the exact same scene that we saw last episode, except we see it from Adrien's side, where he then sneaks up on Ladybug. The same scene happens as exactly as before. Then over here, we have Luca walking away, as Ladybug has already left, but then we have Adrien running to the the ice cream cart, right? But then we see Ladybug fighting the Senti monster that Ladybug left Luca to fight last episode. So I really, really enjoyed that. And we actually see the same thing happen at the school as well. And so we have the school situation where Kagami texts him and he's like, okay, Alia and Nino, like, I gotta head out, right? So he gets into the car, they're about to kiss before they drive away, but then he sees the Akuma that Marinette jumped off of Luca's bike to go catch in the background, and then he, like, you know, has to go and, like, handle that Akuma as well. And so it's really cool how all of these different scenarios, we now see it from Adrien's side, to see that he is giving up, you know, as much of his life as Ladybug. Even though he's not necessarily the guardian, he's basically doing the exact same things as Marinette. And so that should be noted, that even though he doesn't necessarily have the same level of responsibility, I guess you could say, he still, like, is abandoning Kagami in a very similar way that Marinette is abandoning Luca. And so then we have Marinette's charm bracelet falling out of Adrien's bag as Kagami holds his hand and the bag falls down. And that's actually going to be very important for the rest of this episode. And so they're waiting for the car, and Adrien's like, oh man, we could have played the song again because the cars aren't here. So, you know, Kagami's lying, saying that it's time to go. The cars are here when the cars actually weren't here because she wanted to spend more time with him, right? And so he's like, oh, we have tons of time together, right? And so he kind of, like, I don't know, he kind of blows her off, I guess. Like, he kind of looks worried, like he's looking out for the cars, and he's like, oh man, like, he's like, oh man, we could have, you know, we could have played the song again. Like, he still has it on his mind, and then she grabs his arm, right? And so this scene was actually really sweet and kind of sad, because I do feel for Kagami. I don't think that she probably, like, elicited the same amount of sympathy as Luca's episode did, but I think that people understand her character at least a little bit more. And so we see that Ladybug is in the background over here. I think that that's her anyway, and so Adrien sees her, but then isn't entirely sure that it's her. And so she says, I think that we're very similar, and that is true, right? Like, they are very similar, but I think that Kagami's clinging a little too much on that similarity when she doesn't seem to, like, truly understand who Adrien is, like, that other half, right? Like, I think she both sees them as, like, oh, we're these elite kids that are, like, in this, like, specific lifestyle and stuff, and we're very similar. We both strive for perfection. But I think that what she doesn't realize is that Adrien doesn't actually want perfection. He's just forced into that perfection. Yeah, and so Kagami just straight up asks if he loves her, because I guess, like, she's saying that she loves him. Like, that's an admission of love right there that we didn't necessarily get with Luca, right? Because she's saying, do you love me as well? Like, that implies that she's actually in love with him, and so that's, like, crazy compared to, like, the Luca stuff we got. Like, she's, like, dead ass in love with him. And so then I lost something on the boat when my bag fell, don't wait for me. And so that's the excuse that he gives. He doesn't realize that Marinette's charm has fallen yet. That's just another one of his excuses, right? Like, it's just another one of the excuses he gives to go transform into Cat Noir. But this is gonna bite him in the ass later, because Kagami's like, oh, do you mean this thing that you didn't actually find and you were lying to me because I have had it the whole time? Like, that is where that basically all goes. And so we see the Adrien side of the boat a little bit. Like, we see him react to the message that Ladybug left for him. We see him watching, like, as Ladybug is in the spotlight and push her in the river. So I thought that that was nice, just because it does, like, showcase the Adrien side of this episode. I don't think that we're doing this again. Like, some people said, like, oh, Gang of Secrets, or, like, the next episode will be what Ladybug was doing while Adrien was doing that. Like, no, I don't think that we're gonna go back and forth like this forever. I really just think that it was these two episodes. But we see Kagami come in, and, like, Kagami's mom doesn't miss a beat. Like, like, nothing slips past her. She's like, where's Adrien? Right? And so I felt like that was kind of funny. Oh yeah, he's here. He's just answering questions from journalists. I'll be back. Right? And so then she just waits outside, and I'm surprised that her mom didn't pick up on this, but she's looking at the charm that Marinette gave Adrien. I wonder if Kagami knows that the charm that fell out of, like, Adrien's pocket is Marinette's, because I do wonder if, like, her, like, she's basically of the mind, like, oh, like, this is why Adrien is lying to me, because he's actually in love with Marinette, because she knows that Marinette loves Adrien, I think, right? Like, she already knows that, and so maybe she's afraid that she's, like, lost him to Marinette, and so I feel like that this is also gonna be, like, friendship ended with Marinette as well, possibly. Like, obviously obviously Marinette's not the one that lied, right? Like, I think that Marinette was pretty upfront, because wasn't it last season when Kagami was like, listen, okay, like, you know, if you don't do anything about your feelings, I'm gonna, right? Like, isn't that what she basically said in a capacity? She was just like, hey, if you don't act on your feelings, like, get out of my way. That's basically what she was saying, right? And so I feel like that, like, she may be catching on and thinks that Adrien has feelings for Marinette as well, and that's why he keeps running off, or that he's making excuses because he's still in love with Marinette. But in reality, Adrien doesn't even know that Marinette has feelings for him. Not really. And so Adrien comes back after the final scene that we saw from last episode. I hope you found what you were looking for on the barge. And he's like, yeah, I found it, right? What was it? Oh, it's a little lucky charm that Marinette gave to me, and he says that he lost it again, because now he's realizing that he's lost it for real, and Kagami has it. And I really like this shot that Kagami has it in her hand, right? Are you talking about this? And then we see this, like, mind blown, like, face from Adrien, which I thought that was kind of funny. Listen, I lied too. I lied to my mother so we could see each other. I even lied to her that you came here with me tonight. I lied during every fencing class so I could spend more time with you. Do you see? We are both liars. The difference is that I lied just to be with you. You lied and not be with me. And so that's like, oh, that's a very hard-hitting line, and I really like that dialogue. I know that it's translated from the French, but I hope that the English will have like a punchy line as well. Like, I lie to be with you, you lie to get away from me. You know what I mean? Like, I think that something like that could work really, really nicely. I really like this shot as well as the Akuma, like, kind of leaving Hawkmoth's lair and just how the lights work. I just wanted to mention that. Like, it's a little thing, but I really, really liked that. And so Kagami gets akumatized, and then Adrien realizes he fucked up. That's basically what that scene is. And so, yeah, we see her, like, go into the other room, and we see some setup for a couple of things. Like, I think that we see setup for the crocodile around, like, that scene and stuff. I'm not entirely, yeah. So it was this scene we saw the setup for the crocodile. We saw him going after the cake, and obviously that's a little Chekhov's gun, if you want to call it that, right? It's planting the fact that the crocodile likes the cake, right? And that the crocodile is here in the first place so Ladybug can use it later. And so, yeah, like, I don't really have anything else to say about this particular scene, except the fact that, like, Kagami's mom basically is just like, hey, I forbid you, and she's lied too. And so, like, obviously everyone's lied in their life, and so that's not really, like, that surprising, but I wonder if there's something specific that Kagami's mom has been lying about. Does Kagami's mom know that Hawkmoth is Gabriel, like, or that Gabriel is up to sketchy things? I don't know. Find out more next time. Anyway, I'm just kidding. We're not done yet. I thought that this thing was funny. Like, Jagged's like, don't worry, I never lie to my fans. And then it's like, it's wrong, you lie to them about your age, right? And he's like, that's not very rock and roll. And so I like that, because that reminds me of, like, Arnold says this all the time. He's like, that's not very cash money of you. That's what the rock and roll thing reminded me of. And so, yeah, there were some funny moments in this scene, especially, like, the police officer was like, a police officer never lies. And we were like, oh, yeah, okay. Anyways, I felt like that was also another, like, adult joke in a sense, like, more of a mature audience would sort of understand that, right? And so, yeah, like, then we have, obviously, this scene. A world without lies would no longer need superheroes. And that's kind of an interesting thing to say, because I don't think that that's true. I think that even if you were honest with people would still get akumatized, because you can be honest with someone and hurt their feelings, right? So that's, like, a thing. And then the other thing is that, like, it's kind of funny that she says that, though, because if Hawkmoth was just honest with Ladybug and Cat Noir from the very beginning, I wonder if they could have found a solution together. Like, if he was like, yeah, I want the Miraculouses to bring back my dead wife, I'm sure that Marinette would at least be sympathetic. Obviously, she couldn't give over the Miraculouses because, like, something of equal value would be exchanged, but, like, you know, there could be, like, a solution. They could try to find a solution, but no, right? No, if you touch the spear, you will be paralyzed, right? Unless you've never lied. And so they're like, yeah, if you lied, if I lied, right? Like, what about you, Ladybug? And Ladybug's like, yeah, of course I've lied, right? Like, of course I have lied, right? Like, and so I really like this scene between them. We have to lie even just to keep our identity secret. So as Cat Noir is serving as a distraction, we actually see that with the drone. Ladybug sees that the charm is what akumatized Kagami. And so I wonder if that could come up in the future, because she seems surprised. Like, she seems to recognize it and be like, what the charm? Like, what do I have to do with all this? And so I feel like that's gonna be foreshadowing for another episode when we will hear, like, Marinette and Kagami's friendship ended, if it's ended, right? Or Kagami may even confront Marinette. And so then Ladybug starts the plan with the cake. Obviously, like I said, Chekhov's gun, they introduced that. That's what got used. And so I found this line interesting. There are only 2 more liars left in Paris, because I guess everyone else got frozen. And not only one of them. And one of them knows how to turn his attention. And so I feel like that this meant a couple things. Like, one of us knows how to put on a show, because like in real life, so much of the time Adrien has to put on an act. But then the other thing is that like, oh, one of us knows how to be a clown, right? And so I feel like it was sort of like a duology, I guess, of things. Like, it was 2 things. It was that, like, as Cat Noir, he knows how to act like a clown and like get all the attention and let Ladybug like do her thing, right? But then as Adrien, he also knows how to put on a show and put on a fake act. And that's basically what he's doing. He's basically being a distraction so Ladybug can do the thing. And so yeah, I thought that that was an interesting line as well, for him to say that. No, wait, what if I'm mistaken? Like, don't do that. What if I made a mistake? You know what? I trust you. And I thought that that was really good, because at the end of this episode, you get this like, hey, even if we lie to other people, and even if we lie to each other, even if we keep our identity secret, we still trust each other, right? We still have fundamental trust. So I thought that that was really good. And it's like, Cat Noir, don't do that. You're crazy. Yeah, crazy for you, my lady. No, you're just crazy unconscious. I thought that that was funny. I hope that a line like that makes it into the English, because I thought that that was like really funny. And so, yeah, then Kagami goes for the ring, and Ladybug does her little plan. And we see that Jagged's crocodile actually snaps and gets the Akuma out. And so that's, again, sort of a reminder that you do not need to cataclysm the akumatized object. And if that's the case, that means there could be an episode where Cat Noir is akumatized. Maybe. I mean, here's how I see that episode. I see it more as, like, Adrien would take off the ring for some reason. Like, maybe he's fed up. Maybe he's like, Ladybug won't hang out with me anymore, I'm at my wit's end, and so he takes off the ring as a sort of like, I can't deal with this anymore, I don't want to be Cat Noir if like Ladybug, like I don't even see her, right? Or like, you know, she's not like respecting me, I guess, like something like that. We may get a scenario like that where he decides he wants to stop being Cat Noir, because if Ladybug can't even sacrifice some of her time to be Ladybug, like why? But at the same time, why would Adrien do that though? Because he likes being Cat Noir. So yeah, that's the only thing I could see, is maybe like his ring gets lost or stolen and like he gets akumatized as Adrien. That's the only thing that I could sort of see. I can't see him getting akumatized as Cat Noir, because we already saw how things went with that in Cat Blanc anyway. But when you consider that, like how things went in Cat Blanc, like that could kind of happen again here, but then Marinette has the help of like more heroes, and he's not akumatized for the same reason. And so maybe Hawkmoth is just like, okay, well, you know, I already have the ring, like all he has to do is take off his ring, but for now, I'll, you know, make him akumatized and let him use his ring to my advantage. Like that could be Hawkmoth's mindset. So maybe it's not out of the realm of possibility, but I'm just pointing out that we don't need Cat Noir the same way we need Ladybug, and so we could have another episode where people are fighting against Cat Noir, like multiple heroes. And so I thought that this was really nice. She's like, you need to stop doing this to me, right? Because she does genuinely like love and care about him, right? Yes, but it's only because I find that angry look of yours absolutely irresistible. I thought that that was a nice little tee-hee, a nice little funny thing too, right? And I think it's funny too because you see Kagami looking at them, and I wonder if she's almost jealous of like their partnership and the trust and the banter that they have with each other. But anyway, Ladybug. And so yeah, so this is where the cheese metaphor comes back. I already talked about that earlier. Like, even though I love every cheese, I always come back to my favorite. So yeah, he's basically saying, even though, you know, you may love Kagami, you go back to Ladybug. And so this was funny because Kagami was just whacking this poor man, right? And so then the instructor had to be like, hey, like this isn't, you know, personal problem solving time, okay? And she was just beating the shit out of him. She was just beating the shit out of him, and they had to go in the locker room. It's like, okay, fencing's over, you two. Stop trying to kill each other. I'm sorry for hurting you, Kagami. So, like, that was good. Like, you know, Adrien made an apology, and you know, all the good times we shared, it was not lies. So I really like that. Like, I like this apology from Adrien. Kagami says, I know you're hiding something, but I also know there's sincerity in you. And so we can't be friends. And so this is where things really differ between, I feel, Luca and Marinette, because Luca's like, yeah, we can still be friends, why not, right? But I think that that's just because, like, Luca ultimately, like, respected Marinette's, like, privacy and, like, oh, yeah, she'll tell me when she's ready sort of thing. And so he didn't see it as like Marinette actively lying to him, but more like Marinette not being ready to tell him the truth, whereas Kagami sees it as Adrien actively lied to me and keeps lying to my face. And so I feel like that's a difference between them. That's why Luke is okay with being friends and why Kagami is not, because Kagami sees it very like black and white. She's like, hey, you lied to me though. Whereas he sees like something's on Marinette's mind and she's not ready to share it with me yet, but I'm still gonna be her friend because not sharing something doesn't mean that we can't be friends anymore, right? You know what I mean? Like, you know, you don't have a right to anyone else's secret, and even though Luca would like to know, he recognizes that like he can still be a good friend to Marinette. Him and Marinette can still be friends if he doesn't know. It's about when she's ready. Whereas with Adrien, it's less about like Kagami's like wants him to be honest in the sense like, oh, Adrien's hiding something, like he'll tell me when he's ready. Like Kagami doesn't feel that way, and I think it's because she sees it more as like he actively lied to me, whereas Marinette was like passively lying, I guess. He was actively lying. So it's just like a difference of perspective. I hope that what I said makes sense. And so then he gets the charm back. When I'm ready to see you again, I'll let you know. And so I feel like she did think it was because of the charm. Like she thinks it's because of Marinette. So I think that we could see some foreshadowing for her to confront Marinette in the future. And then we get this final scene. Do you know what the difference is between us and the rest of the world, milady? We can't be completely honest with each other. We have our secrets, and sometimes we have to lie, but we know we can trust each other. And I thought that was really nice, right? Because like at least like that's something that they both heavily relate to and like can both understand, is the fact that they both have to lie to people in their private lives. So they really connect on this level, but we know we can trust each other even though we also hide our identities from each other. I thought that this was really nice and sweet, and it shows that Ladybug is actually making some time for Adrien, right? So he's still making, like, she's still making some time for him. He's not like all alone all the time, because they're both sitting here, right? And they're not really like doing anything. They're just on patrol. So it seems like Ladybug understood that, you know, she can't just leave like Cat Noir alone anymore. So that was a nice thing too. And yeah, that is basically it, guys. I hope that you guys enjoyed my little analysis of this episode. I think that's basically it. We touched on all the parallels between Kagami and Luca, and like, doesn't Kagami and Luca seem like they'd be a great couple now? Like, Luca doesn't like secrets, right? Kagami doesn't like lies. It all seems to work out, right? So I hope that you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!